We have liftoff. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to the BGL ID webinar. My name is Warren. I am the General Manager of CAS 360 Ecosystem and Brand at BGL, and I will be taking you through the session today. Before I get started and before anyone races in with the question, yes, today's session is being recorded. So what will happen is today's session, we'll completely record it. Once it's obviously recorded, we'll edit it and we'll put it on YouTube. So it'll be available to everyone, and everyone that has registered for today's session will be emailed a copy of the recording. So you will be able to watch the replay a little bit later as well. As we are using Zoom, if you have a question throughout the session today, please click on the Q&A box and type your question in there. I will try to answer every single question that comes through. I've got Andy, who is one of the CAS 360 product managers, also answering questions as well today. So hopefully we can answer every one of your questions. Now, before I get into the BGL ID webinar and all the BGL ID content, I want to, first of all, introduce you to BGL's product suite. So I know that some of you are already CAS 360 clients, and we'll focus today on the CAS 360 and BGL ID integration or connection. For those that aren't CAS 360 clients, CAS 360 is our company secretarial software that connects to ASIC, prepares all of your important company and trust information, and now client identification verification as well. So for all of your company compliance requirements, and we also have migrations and conversions from other products as well if you were interested in moving to CAS 360. Simple Fund 360 is our SMSF administration platform. It is the most used SMSF administration platform in Australia and obviously industry leading. Simple Invest is our investment platform. So it's all of your investments that aren't SMSFs. So a complete accounting, investment and tax software for managing trusts, companies and for individuals. And Smart Docs 360, which is our newest application, which is a paper to data service using AI and able to convert some of this paper data that we all seem to have into valuable data, sorry. But what I'll do now is I'll get into the BGL ID session. Now, what I'm going to cover today is a fair bit of the basics of BGL ID and then go through a demonstration. So I'll talk a bit about what BGL ID is, how it works, why you should be using BGL ID, some of the benefits that BGL ID has over other providers. I'll go through a live demonstration of BGL ID. I'll talk about what's next because BGL ID was only launched a month ago, so we've got a big plan ahead for it, and pricing and how much it costs to use. So let's get into it. So what is BGL ID? So BGL ID is a new client identity verification service. Now, what we want to do here is allow you to verify your clients, verify that the information that they are providing to you is correct and is correct as per the issuer of those identity documents. Because BGL sells software to accountants, we have designed BGL ID specifically for accounting firms. It is connected to existing applications that you are using like CAS 360 or Simple Fund 360, and it is designed to help you meet the requirements of accounting firms. As I said, it's built into applications starting with CAS 360, so there's no setup or anything like that. It is connected to CAS 360. Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360 integration is coming early next year, and what we plan to have is a ID platform where data can be shared across applications. So we don't have to verify the identity of these individuals in multiple applications. We only have to do it once, and those identity results are shared across many applications. There's no extensive setup or new applications required because BGL ID is built into existing applications. You don't need to go and set up a new application, create new accounts. They are built into existing applications, and there's no, as I said, extensive setup or extra subscription required. Simply add a credit card or a payment method, and away you go. Wrong way. So how does it work? So BGL ID verifies the identity documents of your clients with the identity document issuer. So if we're talking about passports here, we're talking about the Department of Foreign Affairs. And here it's either if the passport was issued by the Australian government or is registered with the Australian government. So when I say registered, that would include foreign passports that are registered in Australia. So we're talking here PR and various visa statuses as well. So it doesn't just have to be an Australian issued passport. It can be a foreign issued passport as long as it is registered in Australia. Also, we will verify driver's license documents, and that obviously issued by the various state and territory road authorities. And also, coming soon will be the Department of Health Medicare card. So a lot of us obviously have Medicare cards, but you'll be able to use these 3 ID methods to verify the identity of the new client that you are taking on. So obviously passports, and again, as I mentioned, Australian issued but Australian registered passports as well are accepted. Driver's licenses and Medicare. Medicare will really only be used when it's used as a second identity document. The primary focus here is getting photographic ID documents verified, and obviously passport and driver's licenses are the 2 there. So not only will BGL ID verify that the documents are legitimate and are valid and are issued by or registered with the relevant authorities, BGL ID will also complete AML screening, PEP and global sanction screening, and adverse media screening. Okay, so BGL ID will complete all of this screening as well. Now, this covers some of the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing legislations as well. So it will allow you to do those sorts of checks as well. And those checks are actually global. So they're worldwide checks, and they check in the case of the adverse media, they check worldwide news articles. Obviously, AML screening is worldwide, as are PEP and sanctions screenings as well. There's just a question here about how we know if a passport is registered or not. Firstly, we'll be able to get that result if we verify it. But secondly, when you are going through the onboarding process, we do have a message that comes up and basically for your client to confirm that the passport is registered. If it's not an Australian passport, it's registered with the Australian government. So it is something that the passport holder will at least need to know. This is all done through Frankie One, which is our verification service. Obviously, you never interact with Frankie One. You do it all through BGL ID, but there is a service that sits in between BGL ID and the various government authorities, and that is Frankie One. You receive an instant result. So it doesn't take a couple of hours. It doesn't take a day or so. You receive an instant verification result, and obviously instant AML, PEP, and media screening results as well. So it is all instant, all real time. And you get a complete verification report as well. So you'll have a identity verification report that you can print out, that you can attach somewhere, but it will give you a report that shows you who has been verified. You can also prepare a listing report of all of your verified contacts as well. Now, BGL ID has 2 methods when completing an ID verification, and I will demonstrate these, but I'll explain them first in detail. So the first one is requesting an ID verification. This is where BGL ID or you will email your client requesting them to complete the verification themselves. Okay, so this is where you don't have the driver's license or don't have the passport details, and you want the client to provide this information effectively to the BGL ID service. They don't provide the information to you. And then the BGL ID service will verify that that information is correct. So request ID verification sends out an email to your client. Your client obviously opens the email, goes through the process, launches BGL ID, puts in their identity document information, clicks submit. And then once they've submitted that, their work is done and the result will come to you. It's an instant result and it will come to you. Verify ID is obviously the other way around, and that is where you actually have the passport information, where you actually have the driver's license details. You might have them in front of you. Maybe you're meeting with that client in real time. You're able to click on verify, and you will get an instant result that their identity document that they have provided you is true and correct. So request is when you don't have the source document or the ID document. Verify is when you do have it. Obviously, with the verify, you get the result straight away because it doesn't need to involve your client getting an email or anything like that. You just need to make sure that you have got consent to run that verification. So there's the two models or the two methods of completing the verification, requesting or just purely verifying. Obviously, the most important thing here is consent. Consent is very important when running ID verifications. In fact, you're not allowed to run ID verifications on someone who hasn't consented to a check being done. Okay, so you do need to have consent built into the system. Certainly, the request ID verification is a little bit simpler with consent because the person has to put their own details in, and then they have a tick box around consent. Obviously, verify, whilst in the software we have a tick box that says you have received consent, but it is obviously best that you get that consent because it is required. So a couple of key points about the BGL ID service. So BGL ID does not store the identity data in the BGL products. Certainly if you use the request information, that ID data does not touch CAS 360 or Simple Fund 360, for example. What happens is we verify that data and we give you the result. The TPB's recommendations here and the ATO's recommendations here are really clear on not holding the data or not holding that identity information. And we've tried to build the system that obviously works within those recommendations. So when using the request method, you never actually, or CAS 360 never actually stores the identity data such as the passport number and the driver's license number. What it will store is it will store the result. And it will store, obviously, details around the result, what document was used, but it won't store the specific numbers. And obviously, that's the safest way because you never see or touch the number. You can't be breached on something you don't have. The verify method obviously requires the data to be entered in and then verified. And once it's verified, it can be removed quite easily. But obviously, verifying the data means you have to actually key the data in to run that verification. But as I said, once the information is verified, BGL products will keep the result. And that's the most important thing, that result. And you have that, as I said, that report that contains the result data. Obviously, the report doesn't contain any of the ID data. The report just contains that it was verified. Okay, and for the AML, PEP, and news information, this is all shown to you and all stored in the product because this is public record information. So the AML, PEP, and news and sanctions data is actually all globally available. And that data is stored and is shown to you, and I'll show you that in the session. So why should you use BGL ID, and why should accountants be doing ID verification in general? What we need to look at is that both the ATO and the TPB have issued client ID verification recommendations. So this came live earlier this year, on the 1st of July. There were these recommendations that were issued and were strongly recommended. So what we have tried to do is build a service that helps meet these recommendations. And that is primarily why we have BGL ID. There is a couple of other areas where this might happen. I've got a little note down the bottom here that the AML and CTF legislation went out for discussion in April this year. And there have been some news articles that are suggesting that perhaps accountants, lawyers, and real estate agents could fall part of the AML and CTF legislation, or tranche 2 of the legislation, because they are mentioned, it's just not active. So there may be some future legislation, not just recommendations, but legislation that comes in here. Obviously, BGL ID is there to help to meet those requirements, but more than just meeting those requirements or those recommendations, it's about minimizing the risk and for you knowing who you are doing business with. BGL ID gives you the ability to verify the information that a client is giving to you. So if you've ever been suspicious or you've ever had doubts, you can now eliminate that. You can verify your information. You should know who your clients are. You should know who you are representing, and at least have some confidence that when you are lodging a tax return or registering a company or appointing someone as a director, that you've at least gone through some checks and balances to, one, verify who that person is, but two, to check if there's been any adverse media about that person, or to check if there's any sanctions or AML records against that particular person. It is just good business, and just for peace of mind and for safety of your practice, to know who you are representing to the ATO and to other businesses. I will talk about a failed request. I will talk about that. So what are some of the benefits of using BGL ID? So obviously there are other ID verification services out there, and with the recommendations coming forward, obviously there's a choice that needs to be made. So here are some of the key benefits of BGL ID as opposed to some of the other applications. First and foremost, it is simple access to identity verification. Some of the firms we've spoken to when we were doing the research for BGL ID was this whole process of, I don't know what application to choose. I don't know which application I would choose. I don't know which application's best. I don't know where to start looking for applications for ID verification. So we wanted to eliminate that and create a very easy, simple access to identity verification for your practice. And that is through software that you already use, whether it's CAS 360 or Simple Fund 360 or Simple Invest 360. There are over 3,500 accounting firms that are using CAS 360, for example. And with this feature going live, all of those firms have access, and simple access, to running these ID verification checks. Secondly, there's no lock-in contract or monthly minimum amounts. So BGL ID does not have a monthly contract. It does not have a minimum that you need to use 50 or 100 checks, or it's $3,000 for 6 months. BGL ID has a simple pay-as-you-use pricing. If you are using ID verification only when you onboard new clients, which is in line with the ATO and TPB recommendations, some months you might onboard 50 clients. Some months you might onboard 10 or 5 clients. With BGL ID, there's no monthly minimum. You pay for what you use. So when you onboard a lot of clients, you make the process to pay for those that you've onboarded. When you only have a few, then you only have a few that you need to onboard. The price is pay as you go. It's made by BGL, and it's supported by the BGL team. So when I say it's made by BGL, it's backed by all of our experience and the experience that we've had in the industry and being able to deliver products. And then it's also supported by the BGL support team in Melbourne. So you're able to rely on the support team and get good support for your products, and a support team that you've probably dealt with in the past. So let's have a look. Now, there are a couple of questions, and the price I will get to, so I'll touch on that. There's a question here: will you be able to verify shareholders, parent companies, and foreign directors who have not been to Australia? Ricardo, there is obviously verification around, I suppose, different regions. The reason why this question is so hard to answer is because, believe it or not, and you probably will believe it, each country has its own rules and laws around data that you're able to verify. In Australia, passports, for example, are able to be verified. In Singapore, for example, you can't verify a Singapore passport. The government won't allow you to verify that passport. So you have to use what they call the NRIC number. So it does depend. Different countries have different regions. For example, in the US, you can verify social security number, but you can't verify a passport. So different countries have different requirements. What we're doing in BGL ID is we'll have Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore to start with, and we are going to add more regions as we go. What happens if there is no card number on a driver's license? I can get into the weeds about driver's licenses, but each newly issued driver's license has a card number, and you do need a card number. Each state has done driver's license with both the license and the card number. So you will need a card number because it is a requirement. What information is retained within the system? I'll touch on that. Why can't this application be included in the yearly subscription? Well, the access is there, but BGL ID has its own costs that we have to pay for. Each verification actually does cost us, so we do have a fee for the cost. All right, let's get into the demonstration. So what I'm going to touch on, or what I'm going to start with, is the contact screen in CAS 360. So here we are, and here's a whole list of contacts that are in CAS 360. Now, I've got obviously all my contacts here, and I've got my individuals. Now, for those of you that have CAS 360, you will know, or you will have seen, the BGL ID buttons that have appeared on the contact screen over on the right-hand side. That's because BGL ID is live. Everything I'm going to show you today in this demonstration, it's not fake. It was released a few weeks ago, and you can use it right now as I'm showing you. But what I have is my contact list in CAS 360, and I am able to run ID verifications on anyone in this contact list. Okay. Now, there was a question before about what if the person isn't a director or a shareholder of a company? That's fine. All we need to do is go add contacts, individual, and we need to put in some basic information, name, first name, surname, an address, and an email address, and hit save. We can save that contact, and once that contact is added to the system, we can run ID verification, or we can complete an ID verification for that client. If you just are adding them for the example of sending an ID request, when you add the information, click Save and Request ID Verification, and that will send the ID verification off to that client. So what the point I'm trying to make here is you do not need the individual to be a director or a shareholder of any company in CAS 360. You can simply add the individual to CAS 360 through the contact screen and complete an ID verification on them. Okay, so they don't need to be attached to a company or to a trust. So you can add a contact. What I'm going to do is just show you an existing contact. So here I am here. Now this is my individual contact card. Okay, and if I can go over to my compliance tab, I've got some information here. Now, if I wanted to just run a verify identity, what I can do here is type in some passport details. Okay. And I can click Verify Identity. And what will happen is CAS 360 will straight away verify the passport details that have been entered in, okay, and complete those AML, PEP, and sanctions checks as well. So by clicking on the blue Verify Identity data, it will verify the data that has been added into CAS 360. Obviously, once the Verify Identity process has been done, I can click on this cross and I can actually delete the identification out if I didn't want to store it, okay? But what I'm able to do is if I have the details, I'm able to click on Verify Identity and send that check off, or that request off, and get an instant result based on the details I have. If I go back to my global contacts here, no, type in orange, it's easier. If I go back to my global contacts here, what I can do if I don't have the details is I can click on the green button, which is Request ID Verification. And this is sort of the more common one that we are seeing at the moment. So when I've got my contact in the system and I want to request that they complete an ID verification, I click on the green Request ID Verification button. Up comes the check that I want to do. So here I've got two types of checks. So this is what's live today. We will be adding more, but there's two types of checks available in the system today. First of all, it is a government ID check. And this includes a government ID check, an anti-money laundering check, and a global sanctions check. Okay, and that is $7 plus GST. And then we have the Australian Government ID Advanced Check. Now, this has the same three checks, the government ID check, the anti-money laundering check, and the global sanctions check, as well as an adverse news check, okay? So there is an extra $3 cost for that because there is a cost for running the adverse news check. So what we have here is the two check products. Now, what I'm going to do is select my $7 check, click on Proceed. And up comes a very familiar screen to CAS 360 users, and this is the email. So when we are doing the request ID verification, we've obviously got the email that is going to go to the client. Now, this email can be completely customized. Okay, so you have the ability to customize it however you want, and your client just needs to click on Verify Identity to go through the process of verifying that. So I'll click on Send. Hey, click on Send, and what that is going to do is send off my email. Now, I did prepare one earlier. So here is the email that your client will receive. Now, what we have here is the email that the client's received, and I can click on Verify. So this is what your client will see. Now, when we click on Verify, this will launch the BGL ID. And what we're going to do is just send off a two-factor code, because one thing I feel we all need in life is more two-factor codes. So we wanted to add more in no. Two-factor code, obviously, to add in a little bit extra security. So I've gone and got that, and I'll just paste that in. That has now been verified. And this is effectively what your client will now see. Now, this will work also on an iPad. It will work on a mobile phone as well as a computer. And we can go and now add the identification document. So I'll click driver's license and passport here. So I'll select passport. And from here, I'm able to select, obviously, whichever country we have. If I select Austria, for example, you will see that this passport must be registered with the Australian government. If I obviously type in Australia, that won't appear. Now, what I can do is enter in my passport information. So what I'm required to do is obviously the basic passport details, including passport number, expiry, and obviously gender, and the issue dates and date of birth. Once that has all been entered in, all that your client needs to do is click on Submit. So they click on Submit, and that is it. Their ID verification process has been done. So they have provided this information. Now, if I click on Submit, there is a consent where the client obviously has to say that they consent to the firm doing the check. So that is there, but that is all that they need to do. Enter in that detail, hit Submit, and it has been sent off for verification. So what happens in CAS 360? Well, firstly, you'll receive an instant notification showing you that the check has been done and the ID has been verified. So as you can see, I've got Doris and Jeff here where the ID has been successfully verified. So you get a real-time notification and that's been verified. If I then go back to my contact screen, I've got some filters on the left-hand side. Firstly, they'll show me all my pending verifications. They'll also show me all of my verified contacts. So here they are listed here. Now, once your client has verified their ID, the information will be shown here on the contact screen with that information listed. So I can see for all of these contacts, I've got government ID passed. So if I look at Stacey, for example, Stacey's government ID has been verified, and I can see here that the matched source is an Australian government ID, and it was done with the passport. So I can see that Stacey's passport has been verified. Now, if I go inside Stacey's contact record and click on the Compliance tab, and what I have here is my identity verification result with a risk level, okay? And obviously a verification status. If I have a look at my government ID, it shows that my passport has passed, and I can have a look at my identity verification report. So that is there as well. If I go back and have a look at another contact, I have a look at, let's have a look at one that's got a passport. I think well, this one's a driver's license. So James, if I go over to James, again, risk level low, verification status succeeded, and I've got my identity verification report, which has been completed. So all of that verification information is there and stored. Now, there was a question around, and sorry, just on the report, it does show that the government ID, driver's license, and the document status was passed. Importantly, it doesn't show the driver's license particulars because we are trying to keep that private. So this will just show that the information has been verified, but that won't show you the specific information. Now, if I go back to CAS 360 and I click on my verified clients, you'll notice here that For the PEP and sanctions section, some of the clients have ticks here, but I've got one with a red button and one with a green button. And this is what is shown when those PEP and sanctions have come back with some results. So it's getting a bit interesting now. Not only the client, in this case at least, we've been able to verify that their government identity document, so in the case of Stacey, that her passport has been verified, but there has come back with a PEP and sanctions result. Now, this is all dummy data, but for you, the names will be a lot closely aligned. But if I click on this PEP and sanctions, what this will show me is those PEP and sanctions result for Stacey. And I can see here that there is a sanction, a UK Treasury Office sanction issued for Stacey in Sweden and New Zealand. Again, the data is obviously dummy data, but we can see that there has been a sanction issued on this particular client. If I go to the PEP section, I can see that, again, this person is listed as PEP Class 1 in Sweden and Tonga. So what the system has been able to, if you don't know what PEP means, it means a politically exposed person. So obviously they're connected to a politician in some way. But this person has come up on sanctions and PEP lists, or a match has been found. If I go over to Judy, which is my other contact with a PEP and sanction match, I can have a look at that. Here there is sanctions on this particular contact. So they're on the Russian sanctions list. Very controversial, I know. And there is a PEP on them as well. So again, what the system has been able to identify is that there is a particular check that needs to be done here. Now, when you start getting into the weeds of AML and PEP and sanctions, you'll notice that because the main identifier that we have is a name, that there is this concept of false positives, certainly around people that have very common names. So when you deal with a client that has a common name, there might be a situation where you will have to check and see if the result is a false positive. So in this particular example, again, because it's dummy data, I have a contact named Judy. But for the case of the demo, the response that the system has found matches Jonathan. Now, in reality, your examples will be much more closer aligned. But effectively, you will have a check, and you will need to verify and see if that person is the person that's been found on the list, or if they are what's considered a false positive. Now, if they are considered a false positive, all you need to do is click and select manually passed, and you can put in a note here. No, name does not match. Put in a bit better detail there, but I can click on confirm, and that will update that status now to manually passed. And if I click on close, I can now see that Judy has been passed because the system has found a potential match. We as humans have read that that match is not the same person. So we have been able to then manually pass that particular sanction check. So hopefully that answers a few of the questions around those PEP and AML checks. Now, what I will do is I'll show you a couple of other features that we have built around BGL ID. The first one is a messages screen where you can see all of your ID verifications that are in flight or have been completed. So if you click on messages, ID verification, here is a list of all of those that you have sent or received. So you have a central list of all of those verifications that have been sent out. You will also see the ID verification status coming through in standard screens. So if I go to Bean Roasters, for example, and if I click on my Officers tab here, you will see that I've got a number of officers that have different statuses. So for Mary, for example, Mary has been verified, because I can see in the screen that Mary's details have been verified and that identity check has passed. I can see that for myself, for Warren, I have an ID verification request that is pending, and I'm able to resend the request. Okay, so this is all within the Officer screen in CAS 360, so you can see this information. I can see for Joe, in regards to Joe, I already have some ID details already entered into the system for Joe. So I could just click on Verify Identity, and up will come my product screen, and I can go through the process of verifying Joe's identity. That blue button, that blue verify button only appears if we have the identity details in the system. And then I have Mary. Obviously from Mary, I can just request an ID verification. But you can obviously commence these steps from within the contact screen like I have shown, but also from within the transaction screens. If I go to settings, reports, you'll see I have some AML reports. So I have a ID verification status listing, which will go through all of my ID verifications that I have completed. And I can obviously filter by different status levels here. So verified, failed, pending, manually passed, manually failed. I can prepare a report for all of that information. All right, the questions are building up. What I'll do is I'll head back over to the slides, but if there are anything in the question, I can obviously come back. So I'll talk a bit about the release of BGL ID. So BGL ID is live in Australia for CAS 360 clients. So if you have CAS 360, you have BGL ID. There's no setup, there's no installation. All you need to do is make sure that you've got a credit card attached to your BGL account, and away you go. You can start using BGL ID and you can try it out right now. For CAS 360 New Zealand and Singapore clients, we are launching BGL ID very, very, very soon. Might be a week away. So BGL ID is very close to being launched in New Zealand and Singapore. In regards to pricing, I did obviously give a little bit of it away in that demonstration, but there are two product types available today. So we have the Australian Government ID check, which is $7 plus GST. That will include your government ID verification, your AML database check, your global sanctions check, and we have the Australian Government ID plus adverse news, which has your government ID, your anti-money laundering, your global sanctions, and your adverse media screening as well. And that is $10. And obviously coming soon is the biometric scanning. So if any of you have signed up for a crypto exchange or anything like that, you might be a bit familiar with the biometric scanning, but it's effectively where you have to, or where your client has to, take a little video of their face, and that gets checked with the photo on their ID document. So that might be a little bit more expensive than the $10 because that sort of technology isn't cheap. So what's next for BGL ID? And I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll look to answer some questions. So we're going to continue to add Australian identity verifications. So the first one that we will launch will be Medicare. So Medicare checking or Medicare checks will be able to come in, and that uses the Medicare number. And this will allow Australian clients to be able to run two government ID checks. So being able to verify two documents, not just one. So you'll be able to verify a combination of obviously driver's license, passport, and Medicare. And that's obviously just gives you a secondary check to make sure. New Zealand driver's licenses will go live, as I said, when New Zealand goes live, hopefully in the next week or so, as well as Singapore NRIC number verification. And longer term, we will look to add SingPass, which is the, I suppose, the digital ID for Singapore. AML screening only. So soon you will be able to also run just the AML screening for a cheaper price. I think it'll be around $3 to just run an AML screen. That will mean you'll be able to do the screening without the ID verification as well. Obviously, I've touched on biometric scanning. So there's a lot of search products that we're looking to add. And then the next part, which is the most exciting, I think, is all around connecting the dots with the industry. We want to make BGL ID the ID verification tool for the accounting industry. And the only way to do that is to have APIs. So not only will you see BGL ID appear in Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360, we are talking with Xero about adding a the integration with Xero Practice Manager, and obviously more applications to come. So being able to connect your ID verification across your CAS 360, Simple Fund 360, Simple Invest 360, being able to add that to our practice management integration. Okay, so we have practice management integration with practice management apps, and then other apps beyond that as well. Being really able to make sure that you're doing the ID verification once, but it appears in all of your applications that you use. Thank you very much. What I'll do, guys, is I will wrap this up and say thank you very much for coming along to the BGL ID webinar today. There is my email address if you want to send me an email. If you've got any other questions, please feel free to send it through to me. Obviously, BGL ID is live and available to you now in CAS 360. So if you wanted to try it out, you can go ahead, try it out and maybe see if there's some PEP and sanctions against you. Maybe delete the contact if there is. But what you will be able to do is do those checks. But thank you all for coming along today. I hope you enjoyed the session and have a fantastic Wednesday. And if you're in Melbourne, go get your jacket. It's not a good day in Melbourne. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a fantastic day. Speak soon. Bye for now.